Hi, I'm Paul Brodie, back in the shop. In behind the camera is Mitch. You can't see him, but I can. We're on the Aermacchi motor. We're going to assemble it today. It's a mock assembly. I still have a couple things I have to attend to, but I'm going to put it together and you're going to see the process that I use. In the last episode, we were having a bit of an issue with the threads. This wouldn't go down far enough. This is the lock nut for the clutch hub. So I want you to see what I've done. This used to be flat across here. See this surface here? It used to be flat, so I machined it down so that this is the same angle as the nut. Now, if you've ever used a countersunk screw, this happens to be a socket head Allen screw. As you tighten this up, it snugs up nicely, and then when you go to take it off later, it doesn't want to move because there's quite a lot of surface area here, and it binds, and then usually it pops. It goes snap. So it's the same thing here. I think this is going to hold very, very well. A little bit of red Loctite on the threads later. So that's what we're doing here. So I won't use this lock washer, because if I machine this all down right out to there so that I could use this, it would be a little bit on the thin side here. So this was a better solution. So this doesn't get used. And we're going to use the angle there, 32 degrees. That's what it ended up at. All right, assembly time. Here's the shifting quadrant. So this fits in right here. There we go, that's in there. Okay, this is the pinion gear. So it goes on here. It's a taper, so the nut's gonna torque it down. Okay, here's a key, and there's a keyway. There's 1, 2, 3. When the piston is at top dead center, what you normally do is to use this keyway here, and you put the key into that, and that sets up the timing to be what you could call as a standard. So that would go, if the key is right there, you would engage this one here because this is the pointer here, and that would go on like so. Okay, it's moving the key right now. If you put the key over here, it advances it by 5 degrees, and if the key goes down here, it retards it by 5 degrees. So what I found is, when I was mucking around with the timing and the degree wheel, that I need the key to be here. So we're going to have this pointing forward, and the key is going to go into this one here. So it's advancing the ignition by 5 degrees. This is good to know. So there we go. Okay, here's the locking washer. You see how that's folded down there? This one is folded down, so that goes into that slot right there. And then on the other side, it's flat. So that's what see how that just fits in there? Fits in there nicely. So then we'll put this on. Now the specs say 35 pounds, but I'm being told by people that know more about Aermacchis than me that it's okay to go 65 or 70. So now we have to hold this somehow, because if I turn that, all the flywheels want to go around. So I've got a tool. See this? This is it's an old one. I wouldn't use a new one. It goes like that, and this just happens to fit like that. So when I tighten this up, see that? That's handy having these here, because then I don't have to hold it with an extra hand. So it's a 27 millimeter socket, which is also 1 1/16 inches. And I'm going to tighten this up a bit. Okay, that's pretty tight. We can put in the camshaft now. So The intake's on the inside lobe, the exhaust is on the outside lobe. So what we have to do, there's a mark here. We have to set the cam timing. See that mark right there? That's going to line up with when it's at top dead center. And that's right there. Can you see? That's the lock washer tang. And I put red felt pen there. So that red felt pen goes in between. Okay, you see how that lines up now? Okay, there's the grinding mark, and there's the felt pen mark. So those are lining up. That means that the cam timing is good. Next, we'll put on the clutch gear. So that's going to go on like that. And that's going to mesh here. You can see there's a little bit of slop. See that? Just a little bit of slop. I've got the gear for the oil pump here, so let's put that on. So it just slides right over it. It's a taper. And you can see there's a little bit of play there, but there's not much force that takes to drive it, so it is what it is. 11 mil, kind of a strange size, but I'll make that a little tighter later, and I'll bend up the tab, but this is okay for now. There's a dowel pin, 1, 2. I put in the oil seals. There's one oil seal here for the clutch, and there's the oil seal for the cam shaft. So I'll put that on. Okay. Okay, now we're going to put on the outer clutch hub, and that's going to fit, and it goes right through the oil seal there. So the oil seal is going to mesh right on that. Put a little bit of lube on there so it slides over a little easier. There we go. So I'll line this up. There we go. Into the oil seal. I put holes in here, a 1/2 inch bar. I'll put a little bit of torque on that. Okay. Okay. So you can see how the thread is right at the top. I did not lose any threads. That worked out very nicely. So what we're going to do now is to put on the inner clutch hub. And then we can assemble the clutch. There we go. This is 24 millimeters. I made a tool out of two clutch plates. You see the little welds, little TIG welds there, and then I made a handle here. There we go. Okay. I got a stack of clutch plates here. This is the first one because it's the steel plate and the friction plate. That one goes on first. And then we got the regular friction plates and the steel plates. And most of the steel plates are flat. But there is one plate that is concave or convex, whichever you want to see. Can you see the space? If I flip it over the other way, Can you see that? And the reason you want one of these plates is because otherwise the clutch, when you start hard, it grabs. This allows the clutch to engage smoothly. So highly necessary if you want to have a fast start. Okay, so let's put this together now then. So this is the first one, friction down. And then a friction plate. And a steel plate. I'll put this one halfway in the pack. Here's the outer plate, which we made on a video. It's been hard anodized, so we'll see how that holds up. Okay. We've got springs. These are the racing springs. They're a little bit longer than the stock springs for a little bit added pressure. I made a custom tool to put these in because there's a stud that comes up the middle. I took a file, it's just a flat file, and I ground it so that it fits and it allows for the thread to come up through the middle. I just wanted to show you this. This is the oil filler cap, and it's safety wired. And I didn't want to drill a hole through the case, so I put in an Allen screw. It's a 6mm Allen screw, and I drilled a hole in it, and that's where the safety wire gets locked to. Just a little bit of the details. I got the ignition system mounted on a plate. Got the slot so we can adjust it for retard, advance. So we'll put that on. I've got the reluctor that fits right onto the shaft here, and that's the trigger. When it passes by this, that's what activates the spark. So I'm just going to put this on. I'm not going to put it any particular way because I got to show you how I mount my degree wheel. Okay, so that's all mounted. So now we're going to put the sprocket on. I made a special socket here to hold the nut. I put a 1/2-inch bar through there. This is the spacer that rides inside the oil seal and spaces out the sprocket. Okay, I get to show you my special tool now. I've got to hold this somehow. Let me tap that on. That's a nice fit. That's a good fit, I mean. There we go. Somehow we have to hold the sprocket. So I made up a tool. It's adjustable for different sizes of sprockets. And then if I take this, oh, that's heavy. So this is how this fits. Like that. That can rest there. Look at that. Special tool. There we go. I put a bit of force on there. Okay, here's the chain guard. This is the stock chain guard, and it works with a 14-2 sprocket. I've got a 15-2 sprocket, so you can't put on the guard and have a chain as well. So I've made up a special guard. We'll get rid of this. This is just made out of 50-52 aluminum. Nothing special, but it has to fit just right. So there we go. See, it snaps into place there. And I got a little 5mm Allen screw button head. Okay, you can see there's a lot of clearance there. I couldn't put the stock cover back on there, so this is going to work just fine. There we go. We're going to talk now about the push rods, the barrel, the piston, the ring gap, things like that. So this barrel has been shortened because I put a Carilla rod in here, and it's 135mm. The stock rod is 145. So this had to get shortened by about 5/8 of an inch. So what that means is that everything gets shortened, even the push rods. So here's a stock push rod. Can you see this? That's a stock one. This one's been shortened. And here's the push rods that go into my motor here. Can you see how much less they are? So how do I know how short these need to be? So what I do is a mock-up assembly of the cylinder head, like I have. And then, okay, there's the tappet adjusted. Do you see how I've got basically equal threads on both sides? So that's where I want this to be. I don't want it up too high or down too low. And then I have an adjustable push rod. See that? It's got a 6mm thread, and I can move it up and down. So I assemble this whole thing. I move this back and forth until I don't have any play here, or very little play. And I know that the tappet adjuster is in the middle, thread-wise. And then that's how I make my push rods. So I have to shorten them up. So what I do is I put it in the lathe. I pot it off, and Mitch is going to show you a photo of what this end looks like, and then I shorten it up the right amount, and then I use the arbor press and I press the push rod together. It's just a press fit, that's all. We're going to look at the ring gap now. I got the barrel honed out. I got a brand new piston. It's from JE Pistons. They're very nice. It's got about, I think about 5 thou play. Maybe a little excessive, but I've got one piston and one barrel, so I can't be too fussy. So the ring gap is 10 thou to 16 thou. So I've got a feeler gauge here. So let's see what we got. There's 16. Is that going to fit? Not really, it's tight. Okay, so let's try a 13. And the 13 fits in nicely. So it's got a ring gap of about probably 14, 15. And the allowed ring gap is from 10 thou to 16. So I checked the ring gap. There's other rings, but I just wanted to show you how you check the ring gap. You put it in, you use a feeler gauge. You have to make sure that the ring is level. You don't want the ring up at an angle like that. That'll give you a false reading. Okay, what I want to show you here, I'm going to take out the valves, and I've been doing some testing on cam timing and things like that. And what I do for that is I use cob springs, because it makes it so much easier when you're turning the motor over. So look at that. That's a valve spring that I put in there. It's a carb spring. That's all it is. So I'll take out the other one. See how soft they are? So I'm going to put in the other springs, and I want to show you something else here that I do that you might not know about. So on the valve springs, what you have to do is to set the preload, because when the seat is seated and the valve is not open, you want a certain amount of pressure on the seat. It's called the seat pressure, and I think it's about 80 pounds. So you have to measure how far down you have to press this spring. I use the arbor press and a bathroom scale. I press down to 80 pounds, and then I measure how long the spring is. So I take out the hardened steel, and then underneath here is a shim, and it looks like this. And I found it really hard to get these out because you get oil down in there and it doesn't want to let go. So I tapped in a 4mm thread. So this is how I take them out when I want to. So I have to do this still. I haven't had the time. So can you see how it's different sizes? This one's a little heavier than this one, a little thicker. So you have to figure out what the height of the spring is if you're going racing. If it's just a stock motor, it doesn't really matter. I've got a valve spring compressor. This is homemade. I bought this part off another valve spring compressor, and I made this piece because it wasn't the right size for doing cylinder heads, not motorcycle cylinder heads. Anyway, so there we go. Okay. Wow. Aren't you glad we're not working on a V12 today? A 4-valve V12? That'd be crazy. Okay, after you got them installed, what you want to do is to seat the keepers. This is what I was shown many years ago. So you just take a soft hammer and you give it a tap. That seats the keepers. So I'm going to put in the piston now. I'm not going to put the rings on because this has to come out for a couple more things. So we'll put the piston in carefully. See on the cutaways, there's a larger cutaway, smaller cutaway, that's intake. Intake goes up. So we'll be careful here. And so what we have to do now is to put the push rods in, and the intake goes on the inside and the exhaust goes on the outside. So we feed them down through the push rod space like that, and we'll put on the gasket. There we go. Okay, why don't I show you this now? So I made a special tool. Here's the tappets. Can you see that? There's a nut, and then there's a slot. So I made up a special tool. You see this? And I took a 10mm socket. Some of these are 11mm, so you have to be careful. And then I welded on a tube, made a handle. The screwdriver goes through, so now I can hold the adjuster and tighten the lock nut. So, special tool. So what we're going to do now is to put on the head, and we have to guide these push rods into the tappet. So that's what this is for. This goes in like that, and it lifts up. Okay, intake goes up first, like that. So you have to hold this up, and then you pull this down, and it holds it. And then you do the other one, and then you push the whole thing on. This is the tricky bit if you don't have a special tool. So we slide that down, but I leave a little bit of a gap here. Maybe like that. Let's try that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, you saw that outside. I'm going to put that round like that under that push rod. There we go. I've got the inside one. That's the intake. And then there we go. So that one, see what I'm doing? I'm pulling this back. And I can go on a little bit more. So that one's held. Then on the bottom one, I have to pull it over a little bit. Okay, I think I got it. You see what I'm doing? I'm holding this one down, I'm holding this one out. And then if I press down, see how they're both moving at the same time? Both these are moving. That means I've got the push rods held. Okay, and that's what I want. I don't have a head gasket. Aermacchis do not have a head gasket. So what I can do now is to put on the head nuts. Here's the wrench that I use for the head nuts. This is a 17, this is a 19, this is a stock wrench. So you can see what I've done. I've angled it a little straighter. It's not so kinked like this. And I've also shaved off metal because that's the only way that it fits on those nuts. You cannot get the open end on, you cannot get a socket on. You need a special wrench for these heads anyway. These are the 73, 74 cylinder heads. So let's go make them tight. The torque is about 30 pounds. So you kind of have to estimate. It just fits. And you can do a 16th of a turn. No, I guess it's a 12th of a turn. Anyway, 30 pounds. I'm not going to torque it down all that way. Oops, went too far. There we go. And these ones are easier to get. Although I took off the covers here because otherwise that little small cover, it gets in the way as well. So on these you always want to do a crisscross pattern when you tighten them up. So you see here how I've got some play. So that's where this comes in handy. So I put it on like that. Tight. So I'm going by memory. I think it's 2 thou and 3 thou, something like that. So this is basically what you do. You want to, there we go. Just a little bit of play. So you can feel it. There you go. Just like that. And then you tighten this up. There we go. I got a little bit of, see that little bit of friction. So that's great. So that's where this comes in, special tool. Because if you can't hold this, when you turn that nut, it's going to move the screw. All right, so I'm going to put all of the covers on now. And that's basically how you put an Aermacchi motor together. And that is our show for today. Thank you for watching. We have merchandise. I know I don't say much about it, but we have We have t-shirts and mugs and things like that. Mitch and I like coffee. If you were to buy us some coffees, that would be much appreciated. We'll see you next time. Take care.